Poor girl walked into the wrong hotel lobby after New Year, never knowing the millionaire would love her. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. The air inside the city felt sharper after New Year, the kind of cold that crept through thin fabric and settled into the bones. She pushed open the glass doors without really looking, just following the warm glow spilling onto the sidewalk. The moment she stepped inside, heat wrapped around her like a borrowed blanket, and the smell of polished wood and fresh coffee told her she was somewhere she did not belong. The lobby stretched wide and bright, ceilings high enough to make her feel small, with soft music floating through the space. She froze near the entrance, her hands tucked into the sleeves of a worn coat, eyes darting as if she might be asked to leave at any second. She had meant to find a public warming center, a place she had heard about from someone at the bus stop, but the night had blurred her sense of direction. All she knew was that she needed to stand still somewhere warm for a moment and breathe. Her shoes left faint wet marks on the marble floor, and she instinctively tried to wipe them away with the edge of her foot, whispering a quiet apology to no one in particular. People moved through the lobby with easy confidence, rolling suitcases, laughing softly, greeting one another like this world belonged to them. She kept her head down, pretending to read a faded notice taped to a wall, when a calm male voice spoke nearby, gentle but clear. He asked if she was waiting for someone. She looked up too quickly, startled, and shook her head, cheeks burning. She explained that she thought this was somewhere else, that she would leave right away. He studied her for a moment, not with suspicion but with curiosity, noticing the way she hugged her bag close as if it carried her entire life. He told her there was no rush, that the lobby was open, and that she could sit for a bit if she needed to warm up. She hesitated, then nodded, murmuring thank you again and again as she took a seat on the edge of a couch that probably cost more than everything she owned. He sat across from her, not too close, giving her space, and asked if she was all right after the holiday. She laughed softly, a sound edged with exhaustion, and said that New Year had come whether she was ready or not. They talked the way strangers do when they believe they will never meet again, honestly and without armor. She spoke about looking for work, about starting the year with nothing but hope and a stubborn refusal to give up. He listened, really listened, without checking his phone or glancing around, and she found herself forgetting the chill in her fingers. She did not know that the man in front of her owned the building, that his name was spoken with respect in boardrooms and printed in business magazines. She only saw someone who met her eyes and treated her like she mattered. Outside, the city kept moving, unaware that in a quiet hotel lobby just after New Year, a single wrong step had set something irreversible in motion. She stayed on that couch longer than she planned, long enough for the cold in her hands to fade and for the tight knot in her chest to loosen just a little. When she finally stood, she thanked him again, her voice soft and careful, and said she should go before she caused trouble. He asked where she was heading, and she hesitated, eyes lowering to the floor as if the answer might be written there. She admitted she did not really know. The warming center she meant to find had closed early for the holiday, and the friend who once let her sleep on a sofa had moved away before winter. Saying it out loud made it sound heavier than it felt in her head. He nodded slowly, not interrupting, not offering quick fixes. He told her the city could feel especially unforgiving after New Year, when everyone else seemed to have plans and promises already in motion. She laughed quietly at that, surprised by how understood she felt. He suggested she have a cup of coffee before heading back out, mentioning a small stand near the lobby that stayed open late. She tried to refuse, insisting she did not want to take anything, but he waved it off with an easy smile and said it was nothing. As they walked together, she noticed how people greeted him with polite warmth, not fawning but respectful, and she assumed he was simply a well-liked manager. Over coffee, she spoke more freely, sharing how she had lost her job just before the holidays when the diner cut staff, how the tips dried up as the weather turned, how she kept telling herself this was temporary. He asked what she hoped for in the coming year, not what she expected but what she hoped. The question caught her off guard. After a long pause, She said she wanted stability, a small room of her own, and mornings where she did not wake up afraid. She did not mention money. He listened with his hands wrapped around the warm cup, eyes steady, as if committing every word to memory. When the clock behind the desk showed it was getting late, she thanked him once more and prepared to leave. He surprised her by offering to call a cab, so she would not have to walk back into the cold right away. She hesitated, pride flaring, then accepted with a nod. As she waited by the entrance, she noticed her reflection in the glass, hair slightly damp from melting snow, shoulders still tense despite the warmth. She wondered what he saw when he looked at her. Before the car arrived, she reached into her bag and pulled out a folded card, edges worn soft. She explained it was a New Year message she had written for her mother but had not mailed yet. She did not know why she showed him, only that it felt important. He smiled gently and told her to hold on to it, saying beginnings mattered even when they started in the wrong place. The cab pulled up, and she stepped inside, pressing her forehead briefly to the window as it drove away. Back in the lobby, he stood alone for a moment, watching the doors close, feeling an unfamiliar weight settle in his chest. He returned to his office upstairs, but the quiet there felt wrong, too empty. For the first time in years, the numbers on his desk meant less than the face of a woman who had walked into the wrong lobby and reminded him that life did not always announce its turning points. Morning came quietly for her, the kind of pale winter morning that makes the city feel suspended between breaths. She woke on a bus bench wrapped in borrowed warmth from the night before, the memory of the hotel lobby still unreal, like something she had dreamed to survive the cold. She checked the small canvas bag at her side, fingers brushing the folded New Year card she had almost given away. The paper was creased and soft, carrying words she had written during a better hour, promising her mother that she would be all right even if she did not know how. That card had become her anchor, the proof that she still believed in beginnings. She stood and joined the early commuters, blending into the crowd as if nothing unusual had happened, yet every step felt lighter than the day before. Across town, he arrived at his office earlier than usual, the city still dim outside his windows. He tried to focus on reports and emails, but his mind kept returning to the way she had apologized for existing in a space that had welcomed her without conditions. He realized how rare that honesty was in his world. On his desk sat a leather notebook he rarely opened anymore, once used to jot ideas before meetings hardened into routines. Without thinking, he wrote a single line about a woman who walked into the wrong place and told the truth because she thought it did not matter. Hours later, she found herself at a community kitchen, trading a few hours of cleaning for a warm meal. She worked quietly, sleeves rolled up, grateful for something solid to do. An older volunteer noticed the card peeking from her bag and asked if it was important. She nodded and said it reminded her who she was trying to become. When she finished, she stepped back into the cold, stomach full, but future still uncertain. She pulled the card out and read it again, letting the words steady her before she continued her search for work. That afternoon, he left his office for a walk, something he had not done without purpose in years. He passed people he normally saw, only through tinted windows. He wondered how many of them carried a single object that kept them moving forward. Back at the hotel, the staff spoke of a young woman who had been there the night before, unsure and polite. He listened without correcting their assumptions. He did not want her story altered by titles or wealth. As evening approached, she returned to the bus stop near the hotel, not because she expected to see him, but because it felt safer than other corners of the city. She sat with her bag in her lap, the card tucked inside like a promise. She did not know that the man who had offered her coffee was looking out over the lobby below, noticing the doors each time they opened, feeling something unfamiliar grow. Neither of them understood, yet that the smallest things they carried, a folded card and a single written line, were quietly setting the shape of what would come next. That evening unfolded in a way neither of them had planned. She remained near the bus stop as daylight faded, watching the hotel doors open and close as guests came and went, each movement stirring a small spark of hope she refused to name. The cold returned slowly, settling into her shoulders, and she pulled her coat tighter while reminding herself that one kind conversation did not change reality. Inside the hotel, he moved through meetings that felt hollow, his attention drifting back to the quiet honesty of the night before. When he finally left his office, he chose not to take the private elevator. He walked through the lobby instead, scanning the familiar space with new eyes. Near the entrance, through the glass, he saw her standing under the streetlight, posture guarded yet patient. The sight stopped him without warning. He hesitated only a moment before stepping outside, the cold biting at his face as he crossed the short distance between them. She recognized him instantly, surprise flashing across her features before she masked it with polite restraint. He greeted her by asking if she had found the place she was looking for. She shook her head and smiled faintly, admitting that the city had a way of testing people after the holidays. He suggested they walk a little to keep warm, offering nothing more than his company. She agreed, careful not to assume meaning where there might be none. They walked along the sidewalk, speaking easily now, as if the night before had opened a door neither wanted to close. She spoke about growing up believing that effort would always be enough, about learning that some seasons required patience more than strength. He shared that he had spent years building things that looked impressive from the outside, while feeling increasingly distant from himself. She laughed softly at that, saying that from where she stood, impressive things often hid quiet loneliness. He looked at her then with a mix of admiration and something deeper, realizing how little she asked for and how much she noticed. As they passed a small park, she stopped to sit for a moment, explaining that her feet were tired. He joined her on the bench, keeping a respectful distance, listening as she described the New Year card she carried, how writing it had been an act of faith. He told her that faith was rarer than talent, and she shrugged, saying it was simply a habit she had not lost yet. The air between them felt charged but calm, a connection forming without promises or pressure. When it grew late, he offered to walk her to a nearby shelter he knew stayed open longer during winter. She hesitated, weighing pride against practicality, then accepted. At the door, she thanked him for treating her like a person rather than a problem to solve. He replied that she had done the same for him. As they parted, neither reached for more than the moment allowed, yet both felt the unmistakable sense that this meeting was not an accident. Behind them, the city continued its restless motion, unaware that two lives had begun to align through a simple choice to walk together. The days that followed settled into a quiet rhythm neither of them had expected. She began to see him not as a chance encounter, but as a steady presence who returned without promises. Each evening after he finished work, he found a reason to pass through the part of the city where she stayed, sometimes bringing coffee, sometimes just conversation. She noticed how he never asked questions that would corner her or make her feel small. Instead, he listened as she spoke about her past with careful honesty. She told him about moving to the city with more hope than savings, about working long shifts and believing effort would be enough, about how quickly life could narrow when one door closed after another. He shared pieces of himself as well, not the polished version others knew, but the man who had learned early to measure worth by results and had forgotten how to rest. They walked often through familiar streets, counting the lights in apartment windows and imagining the lives behind them. Slowly a trust formed that felt fragile but real. One afternoon he invited her to sit with him in a quiet corner of the hotel lobby again, the same place where they had first spoken. She hesitated but agreed, stepping inside with more confidence this time. Staff members nodded at him with respect, and she noticed the way conversations paused as he passed. Something in her shifted then. She realized he was not simply an employee or a manager. He was someone important in a way that carried weight. She did not confront him immediately. Instead, she watched closely, noticing how people deferred to him, how decisions seemed to wait for his presence. When they sat down, she asked gently how long he had worked there. He paused, considering his words carefully, and said that work had been his life for a long time. The answer felt incomplete. That night as she returned to the shelter, she lay awake replaying every moment, wondering what else he had not said. The next day, she overheard two guests speaking excitedly about the owner of the hotel and his recent return after the holidays. They described him with admiration and distance, using his last name as if it carried authority on its own. Her breath caught as she recognized the description. The man she had walked beside through cold streets was not simply successful. He was wealthy beyond anything she had imagined. The realization brought a rush of conflicting feelings. Embarrassment followed first, then anger at herself for believing she could exist in his world without consequence. She felt exposed, as if every word she had shared was now a weakness. When he came to find her that evening, she did not greet him with the same ease. Her answers grew shorter, her posture more guarded. He sensed the change immediately and asked if something was wrong. She looked at him for a long moment, then said quietly that she needed space. He respected her request, even though confusion flickered across his face. As he walked away, she felt both relief and loss settle heavily in her chest. She returned to her bench that night holding the folded card tightly, reminding herself that beginnings could also include endings. Neither of them slept well, each aware that something delicate had shifted and that the truth waiting between them could no longer be ignored. The truth came to the surface sooner than either of them expected. The hotel hosted a winter charity event meant to welcome the new year with generosity, drawing donors, local leaders, and press into the grand ballroom. She did not plan to be there. She had spent the day searching for work, her confidence already fragile, when a volunteer she knew asked if she could help with setup for a few hours in exchange for a warm meal. She agreed without hesitation, unaware of where the work would take her. When she entered the ballroom through a side corridor, the sight stopped her cold. Crystal lights reflected off polished floors, voices blended into a steady hum, and at the center of it all stood him, composed and confident, greeting guests who spoke his name with admiration. She heard his full name announced, followed by a description of his achievements and ownership of the hotel chain. The words landed heavily in her chest. This was not a misunderstanding anymore. This was the truth in full light. She stood frozen near the wall, suddenly aware of her worn clothes and borrowed badge. Every conversation she had shared with him replayed in her mind, now colored by the knowledge of what he had not told her. When he spotted her across the room, his expression shifted from formality to surprise, then to concern. He excused himself and walked toward her, but she stepped back instinctively, shaking her head before he could speak. She turned and walked away, heart pounding, tears burning but unshed. He followed her into the quiet hallway, calling her name softly, asking her to wait. She faced him then, voice steady but eyes bright with hurt. She told him she finally understood why people looked at him the way they did, why doors opened so easily. She asked why he had let her believe he was just another man passing through the city. He listened without interruption, the weight of his choice clear on his face. He said he had never intended to deceive her, only to protect the one place where he felt seen without expectation. He admitted that he had hidden behind normalcy, because it was the only way he knew to be himself. His words did not erase the distance that had formed. She told him quietly that kindness felt different when it came from someone with nothing to lose. She needed to know that what they shared was real, not an experiment or a moment of curiosity. Guests passed at the far end of the hall, unaware of the fracture unfolding just out of sight. He took a breath and said he understood if she could not stay, that he respected her choice. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the folded card she had shown him days before. He had kept it safe, he said, not as a souvenir, but as a reminder of what mattered. He told her he fell in love with her courage long before she ever knew his name. The words hung between them, sincere and unguarded. She looked at the card, then at him, and felt the pull of what could be and the fear of losing herself. She turned away once more, leaving him standing alone in the hallway, the applause from the ballroom echoing like a reminder of the world they did not yet share. Outside, the winter air felt sharper than ever, and she walked into it knowing that everything had changed. The next few days felt like a slow unraveling, a process neither of them fully understood. She spent the nights pacing through streets that no longer seemed familiar, trying to quiet the questions that rattled in her mind. Her heart was heavy with the distance she had created between them. She had told herself it was for her own good, that she had to protect the one thing she had left, herself. But as the days passed, that feeling of safety began to feel like a cage. He gave her the space she asked for, but every time he saw her, it was with the same concern in his eyes, a concern she couldn't dismiss, even if she tried. He sent her messages, brief ones at first, asking if she was okay, letting her know he was thinking about her. She answered sparingly, afraid of letting the wall she had built down. Then, on a quiet Thursday afternoon, she stood outside a small cafe, wondering if it was the right time to let him in again. She had taken the day off to breathe, to figure out if her own heart could catch up with what her mind had told her to do. She was still unsure, but as she stepped closer to the entrance, Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out and saw a message from him. "Can we meet today? I'll be where we first met. I'll be waiting, but I understand if you're not ready. Just know that I care about you." She stared at the screen for a long moment, her fingers trembling. Something inside her shifted. It wasn't the words that convinced her, but the fact that he hadn't tried to rush her or push her for an answer. It was the patience in his message, the same kind of patience she had seen when he first looked at her across the hotel lobby, as if he already understood the depth of what she carried. Without thinking, she typed back, "I'll be there in 10 minutes. When she arrived, he was already sitting at the same table near the back, the one they had shared during their first conversation. He looked up as she approached, a soft smile forming on his lips, but his eyes held a quiet kind of longing. She sat down slowly, feeling the weight of everything between them. They were both silent for a few moments, just watching each other, as if trying to find the right words. Finally, he spoke. "I never meant to make you feel less than. I see you, more than I've seen anyone else in a long time." She didn't know what to say to that. The vulnerability in his words caught her off guard. She had been so focused on protecting herself that she had never allowed herself to believe that someone else might want to protect her too. "I know," she said quietly. "I just didn't know how to trust something like this. I've spent so long surviving on my own, I forgot how to let someone in." He nodded, his expression softening. "I understand, and I won't force you to be ready. But I want you to know that I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." His words lingered in the air, filling the space between them. She felt something inside her finally release, something she had kept locked away for so long. She met his gaze, and for the first time in days, she allowed herself to truly see him. The man who had shown her patience when she thought no one would. They didn't need grand gestures. They didn't need perfect timing. What they had was already enough. Two people, finally ready to be vulnerable with each other. As they sat there, the conversation flowing easily between them once more, she realized that sometimes the hardest part was not learning to trust someone else, but learning to trust herself. The night ended with a quiet walk through the city, no promises made, but something between them had shifted. The uncertainty still lingered, but it no longer held them back. They had taken the first step towards something new, and that was enough for now. The days after their quiet walk were filled with the kind of warmth that comes with healing, though neither of them could yet call it complete. She found herself returning to the hotel more often, though she had never intended to. Each time, she felt a little less like an outsider, a little more like someone who belonged. He made no grand gestures, no declarations, only small, consistent acts of kindness that had begun to weave a tapestry of trust. They spent afternoons in the hotel lobby or nearby parks, talking about everything and nothing, letting the world keep moving around them while they stood still. She had not expected that. She had not expected to feel at ease in a place like this, surrounded by things she thought she would never have. The idea that he might love her felt both foreign and natural. There were moments when she thought she was imagining it, when doubts whispered at the edges of her mind. But each time she caught him looking at her, there was a quiet certainty in his eyes that grounded her. He had not asked her to change or to meet some standard she couldn't reach. He had simply met her where she was, in the middle of her mess and her fear. It was enough. One evening, they sat in the same cafe, now familiar with the place and each other. She noticed how relaxed he seemed, how the tension he carried when they first met had softened. He asked her about her dreams again, the ones she had been too afraid to say aloud before. This time, she told him. She told him about her art, how she longed to open a small studio of her own one day. He listened with intent, his eyes never leaving hers. He didn't interrupt or try to fix anything, just nodded and said that it sounded beautiful, that he believed she could do it. She laughed at that, unsure whether it was possible, but somehow his belief in her made her want to try. She had spent so much time feeling invisible, like her dreams were too small or too unimportant. But with him, her dreams felt like they mattered. The next day, she received an email from him, simple but impactful. It contained an invitation to a charity gala, with a note attached, "For the art project you've always wanted." She stared at the screen for a long moment before she allowed herself to smile. The email didn't say much, but the gesture spoke volumes. She thought about turning it down at first, afraid of what it might mean, but when she saw the invitation again, she realized it was more than just an event. It was a chance to step into a new chapter of her life, to be seen not just for what she lacked, but for who she was. That evening, she stood in front of the mirror, the dress she had borrowed feeling like a second skin. When she walked into the ballroom, she wasn't just the woman who had wandered into the wrong hotel lobby anymore. She was someone with a story worth telling, and for the first time, she believed it. As she entered, she spotted him across the room, his expression softening the moment he saw her. Their eyes met, and in that quiet moment, the space between them seemed to shrink. She walked toward him, not with hesitation, but with the confidence that had been quietly building between them. The night felt like a beginning, a celebration of more than just art or wealth. It was a celebration of connection, of two people who had found each other in the most unexpected of ways. And in that ballroom, under the soft glow of chandeliers, she knew this was only the start of what they would build together. As the weeks passed, something inside her began to settle, a quiet confidence taking root where uncertainty had once been. The invitation to the gala had been a turning point, but it wasn't the end. It was the first step towards something neither of them had expected, something built not on titles or wealth, but on genuine connection. He had kept his promise, never pushing her, always giving her the space to figure out who she was and what she wanted. They continued to meet, sometimes in quiet corners of coffee shops, other times in the warmth of the hotel lobby, sharing stories about their past, their hopes, and their fears. He never treated her like someone who needed saving, but as a partner, an equal. As the days passed, she began to see him not just as a man who owned a hotel, but as someone who had built a life of his own, one full of struggles and triumphs, just like hers. She started to believe, for the first time in a long while, that they were both worthy of something more than survival. One afternoon, they stood together in a small art gallery she had rented, the walls lined with her sketches and paintings, her dreams finally taking shape. He stood next to her, admiring the work she had created, and for the first time, she felt seen in a way that was not about pity or charity. It was about respect. It was about love. As the evening drew closer, guests arrived, their smiles genuine as they admired her art. She stood by his side, his hands subtly resting on her back, grounding her as the crowd buzzed around them. At that moment, she knew the life she had dreamed of wasn't so far out of reach. They had built it together, step by step. After the event, when the last guest had left and the gallery lights dimmed, he turned to her with a soft smile. "You did it," he said quietly, his voice filled with admiration. She smiled back, feeling something shift between them. It was more than the art. It was more than the hotel or the charity gala. It was the realization that they had both found something in each other that was worth holding on to. In the quiet of the empty gallery, he reached for her hand and squeezed it gently. "I know we've had our doubts, but I want you to know that I'm here for all of it. For you, whatever comes next." She looked up at him, her heart full in a way she had never expected. She had always thought she needed to stand alone, to fight for herself without anyone's help. But now, standing there with him, she realized that love didn't mean losing herself. It meant growing together. And for the first time, she allowed herself to fully embrace the possibility of a future where they both thrived. They didn't need grand gestures or promises. They just needed to keep walking forward, side by side. And as they stepped out of the gallery into the cool night air, her heart felt lighter than it had in years, knowing that she had finally found where she belonged. In his arms, in her art, in the life they would continue to build together. In this heartfelt story of unexpected connections, a young woman discovers that sometimes life's greatest transformations come from the most unexpected places. This millionaire story begins when she walks into the wrong hotel lobby after New Year's, unsure of what the future holds. Little does she know, the man she meets there is a successful millionaire who sees her not for her circumstances, but for who she truly is. As the days pass, they both navigate their own struggles, and through their growing bond, they realize that love and support can come from places they least expected. Their journey together is a beautiful exploration of trust, vulnerability, and shared dreams. This millionaire story highlights the importance of kindness, patience, and believing in one another, no matter how different their worlds may seem. When she finds the courage to follow her passion for art, he stands by her side, offering unwavering support. Together, they build a life that's more than just about wealth or status. It's about the connection they've cultivated, the trust they've shared, and the love they've found. This millionaire story shows that the richest parts of life are often the ones we can't measure in money, but in the depth of the relationships we nurture. With each passing day, they come to understand that true happiness doesn't come from fame or fortune, but from the people we choose to share our journey with. As their bond deepens, the story takes us through moments of doubt, discovery, and ultimately, love. It's a reminder that sometimes the most life-changing moments happen when we least expect them, and when we open ourselves to the possibilities, magic happens. In this millionaire story, we witness two people learning to trust in themselves and in each other, proving that love is the ultimate wealth. From the wrong hotel lobby to a thriving partnership, this millionaire story is one of growth, heartache, and ultimately, fulfillment. Every step they take together brings them closer to a life filled with purpose, art, and a love that transforms them both.